So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to a brilliant presentation of the paper written by the Ambassador Jan Tombinsky, Why the European Union Will Be Better Off with Ukraine. I am the director of the Kiev office of GlobSec, Yulia Osmolovska, who will be moderating this discussion. And let me start with introducing the author of this paper, Ambassador Jan Tombinsky, who has spent most of his career in diplomacy and already in the position, in the ambassadorial position. He started almost 22 years ago, becoming an ambassador to France in 2001, 2006, then a permanent representative of Poland to the European Union, 2007, 2012. Then the ambassador was the head of the mission of the European Union to Ukraine in 2012 and 2016, having witnessed the first Russian invasion of Ukraine, annexation of Crimea. And in 2014, he became even the hero of the documentary After Minsk, from the cycle of the City of Heroes. So in 2016, 2020, the ambassador Jan Tombinsky was the head of the mission of the European Union to Vatican. So the ambassador, I'm really delighted that you're here with us today, and I'm pretty sure that all the audience are very keen to know what are the key elements in your paper that you would like to present to us. And the first question to this introduction would be why it is important to come up with this paper these days. Why is it something important about the moment when the paper appeared publicly? Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you, Director, for this introductory words and for inviting me to present the paper. The paper was prepared in the context of the European Council next week, the council that is about to decide on the opening of accession talks, following the progress Ukraine made for past 2 years, but even more than past 2 years, past 10 years since the association agreement was signed. But the past 2 years were dramatic years of the war. And despite the war, Ukraine has made tremendous progress also in regulatory framework to adjust with the European regulations. But this is the opening of accession talks is a prerequisite to advance forward and to pave this way to become a member of the European Union. And very often we see in the international discussions all the different hesitations about costs, about consequences of enlarging European Union. Suddenly, the Russian aggression has changed this approach of many European countries that for past 10 years completely banned from the agenda the question of enlargement. And I expect the next commission to be formed after elections to the European Parliament next year to be very much about enlargement and about also a geopolitical role of the European Union. It also will be very much on security and defense, because Russia has shown to a European Union and to European members that there is no peace, stable peace in Europe without that Europe takes its share in protecting itself. American elections next year and the suspense before it also force people in Europe to think more in terms of European security and certain autonomy also in defending its own territory. But I focus in this paper on arguments that are not so often used in this public discussion. We know, we may imagine what Ukraine wished to gain with becoming member of the European Union. But people tend to forget that also European Union will gain a lot with Ukraine being a member of the European Union. Therefore, I try to list certain arguments why having European Union within the having Ukraine within the European Union is an asset for the community. It's an asset for certain reasons. It's an asset because of human capital that Ukraine possesses. It is an asset because of economic potential of Ukraine. It's an asset because of Ukrainians' capacity to ensure food security and to ensure also a green transformation of the European Union. Is an asset in terms of energy security for the European Union. It is also an asset for European Union from the point of view of the role of the European Union in the global context to increase the capacity of Europe to be not only a payer, but also a power within within the world competition, but also to be a better provider of development assistance on ensuring food security worldwide, in ensuring security worldwide. And probably something that is very sad in this context of the war, every conflict results with an increase of legal tools in the international law to prevent conflicts or to remedy to conflicts or to punish the culprits of the conflict. So I try to list these arguments in this as follows, as I mentioned it now, with also knowledge that the first prerequisite for making this potential work is security situation. So first is to win the war, to regain Ukrainian territory and Ukrainian sovereignty over its territory and over its assets. Security situation is a prerequisite for everything. I use also as an example for presentation of Ukrainian assets, experience of European Union from previous enlargement, especially from the so-called big enlargement 2004-2007, as 12 members joined the European Union, and how it all also boosted the European economy. We very often focus on gains of new members, and it is without doubt that new members developed largely thanks to a financial, technological, and regulatory assistance from European Union and from old member states. But people tend to forget that this enlargement 2004 was also a booster of the economy for old members. Several studies show how much was the return to the old member states, to netto payer to the European budget, from cohesion funds invested in new countries, especially in Poland. For some countries, this return was on over 75% of every euro invested in the cohesion funds that returned to countries of origin. Why? Because countries, the catch-up economies on the European territory, they were buying technologies, they were buying equipment, they were buying capital, they were buying services were in old member states. because of the open competitive procurement market of the European Union. This will also be the case for Ukraine. Ukraine will need a lot of investment. And why this investment is so profitable for old member states or those who dispose of this capital, because the return from the capital will be much higher than in economies that are already so developed. Ukraine, we still do not know when, but once it recovers from the war and starts reconstruction, the growth will be probably two-digital. Therefore, the return from invested capital will also be accordingly higher than in other economies with growth of 1 to 2%. This is one of the gains. Second gain is where I see this gain is agriculture. We see already now with conflicts between Ukrainian exporters and some member states of European Union, how competitive the Ukrainian agriculture sector might be. But we focus mostly on producers, but consumers outnumber producers. For the potential of Ukrainian agriculture will contribute to food security, to stabilization of prices, to keeping inflation under control on the European market. On top of it, with its fertile soil, Ukraine has a potential to offer bioproduction, which is so much looked after in other developed countries, but also to allow for reducing green gas emissions and to absorb a lot of CO2 from the air. So agriculture is important, and we see with the consequences of COVID, with the consequences of international world competition, how important it is to have this production within Europe. Second element is element related also to energy. So we are all using energy increasingly, and this energy is so much needed for all the security and energy. Ukraine disposes of enormous energy production potential, with still some parts of this potential untapped. I mean, all this transformation to bio production for energy from biomasses, from wind, partially also from water that still corresponds for rather low part in energy generation in Ukraine, despite of large amount of water resources in Ukraine. Ukraine also has a high level of deposits of energy, raw materials, gas, oil, and coal, but also of those who are more crucial for modern technologies. Certain ores that are in the Ukrainian earth could be crucial for development of modern technologies, especially IT sectors. And this IT sector is one of the sectors who became driver of Ukrainian economy. This IT sector has also proved its ability to protect Ukrainian in time of crisis. The pandemic has shown how much this IT sector has helped to continue education uninterrupted in Ukraine. And during war, IT sector mobilized so much to defend country, to produce what was needed in the sector of defense. And it is a sector that leads the world also to the reality of the military conflict of the 21st century. So Ukraine might be also leader in the sector of IT, but IT connected also with defense sector that Europe is now dedicated to more and more attention to. So Ukraine will be an asset for Europe as well. Then we have probably the biggest, but the most suffering asset of Ukraine, which is human capital. Well-educated population with certain level of people with tertiary education higher than the European average, with people who are very often choose technical and exact sciences as the tertiary education, high level, much higher level of all engineers and people with exact science education than average in European Union. It will also help European Union to modernize, to operate the next stage of technological transformation and revolution that the world is now undergoing. Ukraine, with everything what happens now, could be also leader of a transformation for the region, a leader of transformation for other countries, showing that it is possible to break out of the stagnating post-Soviet reality. We've seen it throughout the revolutions of past 20 years, the Orange Revolution, how Ukrainians defended democracy and the principle of re-elections, the revolution of dignity, that I witnessed in Kiev, this defense of sovereignty and of a European perspective of Ukraine. And now, unfortunately, this mobilization of society in defending the country. Population is, people are very much suffering from it, but this highlights also the role of women in Ukrainian society. Men on the front, men mobilized, and men very often absent from administration, from households, from education, from other sectors. Women have taken the responsibilities. It will also show how much Ukraine reality forced women to take responsibility and to be in lead. It may be a good example for Belarus. It is already followed by Moldova that followed suit in submitting its membership application, and will also be on the agenda of the European summit next week. And Ukraine, unfortunately, proved by this war, will also be a security shield for Europe. Russia will stay as a big challenge for European future, for European security. Ukraine has tested this threat and this danger on its own skin, and has also acquired experience that will be welcome by all other members to prepare better to confront this existential risk for Europe. With this existential risk for Europe goes also a question of development of international regulations, international law. Past century has shown how often every conflict resulted with changes in the international law to prevent conflicts or to take those who are responsible for crimes into justice. And we see now this work ongoing with people from various countries trying to find ways how to put Russian leadership to the responsibility for all what they committed in crimes against not only Ukrainian, but it is against humanity. The warrant issued by the International Court against President of Russia and the Children Ombudsman are first steps in this on this way. The other step will be most probably also using Russian assets for Ukrainian reconstruction, but still the work is not done, not completed. It is very difficult for certain member states of the European Union, but also globally, to trace this asset and to force this asset to return to Ukraine as this capital for the reconstruction. So the paper, to sum up, is about how Ukraine, with its experience, dramatic experience, but also with its natural potential, could contribute to making European Union stronger and better off in the global context. Thank you, and I will be happy to listen to comments and critics.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I see already questions coming in our Q&A section, so I do encourage the guests to put your questions on the list, and we will try to answer as many as possible. And before I move to the second speaker, where we'll be probably discussing more geoeconomic stuff and the economic part of what has been contained in the ambassador's paper, I want to follow up with a question to the ambassador on geostrategic nature. And I'd like to quote your paper, where you said that the key to Ukraine's future in the EU lies not in their hands, but with the EU leaders. And with reference to the recent remarks of the ambassador of the EU to Ukraine, Katerina Maternova, where she said that eventually European Union started to realize that size and weight matters. And this is why Ukraine has become more attractive for European Union for geostrategic and geopolitical reasons. I would like to put to you the question, what is your sense now, especially ahead of the forthcoming debates on the accession talks? Do all of the EU leaders of the EU member states share this geostrategic perspective and ready to welcome Ukraine in the European Union family? Thank you.
This size and weight matters in politics, and we see it also within the European Union. What are the most influential countries, that dispose of this economical weight and could be those who propose solutions, who propose regulations. So, but for Ukraine, for the time being, size really matters, because it would create this perspective of expanding the production and the territory of the European Union. Very often people refer to American success. As I was at school, United States counted around 226 million inhabitants. It counts now almost 350 million inhabitants. But this inflow of people, inflow also of needs to satisfy this growing population, is a trigger for economic growth. And in the European Union, it also will be a trigger for the economic growth. As the enlargement 2004-2007 contributed to growth of whole European economy, it now accounts for more than 25% of global GDP. I guess enlarging with or taking Ukraine within the European Union would also be an asset and a booster for economic growth. This is a challenge, and challenges are very welcome because challenges need a solution. So will be a lot of problems with a reinvigorated Ukraine economy. But I see also that people in Ukraine are so much nostalgic to see the country really punching on the level of the weight of the country, using the potential. So there's more fatigue within the old economies, established economies, than in Ukraine. Ukrainians, as we were 20 years ago, are ready and willing to work more to achieve something. So I see this, in this case, this weight and size matter, and this is perhaps also the reason why Russia is fighting so much to prevent Ukraine from changing, from contributing to the European economy.
Thank you very much. We're still moving into geo-economic side, so it's definitely high time to introduce and to welcome the second speaker, Vladislav Rashkovan. Let me introduce him briefly. Vladislav has extensive experience on high positions in the Ukrainian financial and banking system, both working as in the top management of the commercial banks, and since 2014, he has been the director of strategic department and reformation of the banking system within the National Bank of Ukraine and the member of boards of National Bank of Ukraine. He also served as acting head of as acting deputy head.
I was a deputy governor of Central Bank, Yulia. I mean, I'm not the main speaker, so let me, if I may, maybe contribute to what the ambassador was saying.
Okay, if I may, Vladislav, just a bit direct your discussion. Please reflect on what you would like to say from the paper, and definitely the issue of investments will be of key interest to our audience, because we need to start like preparing for this bigger inclusion of Ukraine into European family already now. And where do you see the biggest obstacles from the position of alternative director for Ukraine of the International Monetary Fund now? Yeah. Thank you.
I'm representing 16 countries at the board of IMF, and many European countries. Okay. The issue, you know, again, let me start with reflecting and also maybe commenting, because clearly I'm not the key speaker here today. I'm co-speaker. And we're discussing the paper, which I think it's not only very well articulated, but also very timely, and thanks for that. The Ambassador Dubinsky used the concept, or he started the paper with words that Ukraine was knocking to the doors of European Union for a while. And it's true. I have a slightly different metaphor for that. And this metaphor is metaphor of the European train. You know, there were several opportunities for Ukraine to join the European train. And end of 80s, when many European countries, including Poland, for example, with Solidarność, they started thinking about the United Europe after the collapse of the Berlin Wall. Ukraine was not there yet. We were not yet nearby the European train. In early 1995, late 1994, I was, like a freshman at the university, and I remember the cover page of one of the news magazines, and it had a name, European Train. And the article was that many countries joined many European countries joined European Train. It was said about Poland, it was already that time Hungary, Slovakia, a few other countries were joining a little bit later, we were to the train. And they said, in the article it was said there was only one European country which didn't join the train, and it was Ukraine. Because in 1994, we had elections where we factually made our choice. Instead of going Western direction, we went to the post-Soviet direction, electing also the president, which was representing the East and factually conserving more or less post-Soviet vector of development. In 2004, Ukraine was trying to get or to become closer to the European train. Unfortunately, the train was already far from us, and those countries which started their path in the 80s and early 90s, they managed to join and they managed that wave of the European Union enlargement. In 2014, Ukraine speed up for that train, and I want to thank Ambassador Tambinsky, specifically, for his job that time that helped Ukraine also to both not only to understand but also to instrumentalize that path as well. Again, amid all the difficulties of the war. And now in 2022, we're again speeding up again during the war. And this is the time when in 2014, we were giving some sort of the sign from European Union that, yes, if you speed up, if you do your job, if you do your homework, you may get to the train, potentially. And now when the European Commission starts the discussion and open discussion on that, this is a big sign for us. And let's think that from all this, period of train or getting to the train or thinking about the train, like at 20 years or 23 years of leadership of Russian Tsar in Russia, he did everything possible, or they did everything possible in order Ukraine not to get to the train, and undermining the Ukrainian path to this train. And that's why it was not so easy for us, economically, politically, locally, and with propaganda, getting out from the train, on the way when we were in 2010, 2015, So this was, a complicated story for us. But I fully agree with one of the conclusions of the paper, that it was one of the biggest miscalculations of Mr. Putin, because, as of today, more than 90% of Ukrainians are dreaming about to rejoin the family of European Union. And this is a super strong anchor in the mindset of Ukrainian people, not only in the Ukrainian institutions, not only in the slogans of politicians. This is in the mindset of European Union, and Ukrainians want to be a member of European Union. The second thing which I wanted to say is something which probably I would add to the paper. Again, it's not a critic, but just thinking about a little bit one more angle. We are living currently in exceedingly fragmentizing or fragmented world. So the speed of fragmentation is unfortunately increasing. And for Ukraine, but I also believe for Europe, it's also very important that the borders of this fragmentation this time will go through our eastern borders and not western borders. Because as I said, in 80s, after the Berlin Wall collapse, after the in 90s with European trade, unfortunately, every time in the previous iterations, we were keeping under this post-Soviet being part of the East. Our place, I strongly believe, in the West, and I'm sure with all arguments with Ambassador Tambinsky put in the paper are factors, for to support this idea. And I fully agree with all the reasons, maybe with one small exception, but with all the reasons which Ambassador put as factors. I would add one more, which is unfortunate somehow, is there are not so many people in the world who are ready to die under European flags. And these are people currently in Ukraine. Ukrainian people are fighting today not only for Ukrainian sovereignty, not only for our country, for our borders, for our people to liberate our cities. I strongly believe we are fighting also in this more global world of the tyranny and totalitarianism versus the Western world, versus the liberal idea, versus democracy, versus globalization. We are fighting on the right side, and we are protecting those European values which Ambassador Dombinski is writing in his paper. So this is an important factor which probably should be added. From other perspectives, can we become a hub for European Union? Absolutely, yes. Is it agricultural hub? Is it a green hub, green energy hub, green metallurgy hub? If it's a IT hub or mill tech, as Ambassador was saying, so on the intersection of the military and IT, I mean, or it's maybe a manufacturing hub, thinking about you bringing Ukraine closer to the European value chains. Also, as Ambassador said, for the pure cost perspective, in order to manage the inflation, which, by the way, for many years becomes a problem in Europe. One element where I would probably, it doesn't mean that I disagree, but I think speaking about the human capital, speaking about Ukrainian people, I strongly believe they become an asset for Europe, and Europe already understands that, not only from the labor force, not only from consumption perspective, not only from the skills perspective, but also from humanity perspective. You know, it's very clear what we have, you know, the women and kids, and the ambassador said very, very elegantly and very, you know, well explained the role of women in this you know, accession. So the face of Ukraine today in Europe is mostly women and kids, which is a very nice face. I hope it will not be considered as a, you know, sexist statement. You know, so we know that Ukrainian women are intellectual. They are very you know, hardworking and very human. You know, and that's why, I mean, it's a very nice face today in Europe. But if I may, you know, a little bit criticize this, in order to keep those people, this asset in Europe, Europe apparently will not need to, you know, Ukraine to join. They just can try to keep those people who are currently in Europe, you know. And I was speaking in Poland several times on the conferences during last you know, 2 years. And I was assured, say, Vlad, don't be afraid. Your people here, they can feel themselves as at home. And I said, thank you very much. I would like they would feel like a good guests, you know, because their home is in Ukraine. So having said that, in terms of investments, I think all these hubs is absolutely possible for Ukraine, but it's not given. You know, there are a lot of prerequisites for Ukraine to become a hub. But they need the investments. And here, I would say, again, especially looking at the current strikes on the borders in Slovakia or in Poland, I would say that one of the tasks for the potential new leadership in Poland, at least, is to think how to convert the word competition, which currently is embraced somehow in the minds of both truck drivers or farmers in Europe, to the word partnership. You know, how to make partnership with Ukrainian companies, how the Polish company would consider that they have fields for apples both in Ukraine and in Poland, and like in other countries in Europe. This is the concept of this building up joint ventures through privatization, through partnerships, through, for example, using the Warsaw Stock Exchange as a home for Ukrainian companies, not as a platform for the foreign companies, but really changing itself for become a home, like Ukrainian and Polish companies would be treated there as home countries, not a host. You know, Poland would be for Ukraine. So it means that Polish banks or, you know, European banks should go back to Ukraine and, you know, participate in the privatization of state-owned banks. This is a very important element, you know, how to integrate Ukraine to Europe. The last thing which Ambassador again is very well writing in his paper is that Ukraine can be also both a role model for Europe as well. And I can give you at least one example on top of what we discussed about this kind of hubs concept is like rebuilding or building new cities in Ukraine. Building new cities, and you put the connect, you know, speaking about new European Bauhaus. I mean, Ukraine now with a lot of cities almost fully destroyed by the Russian tanks and the missiles is a unique, the war is a tragedy, but there is a unique opportunity for Ukraine to get rid of the Soviet legacy in infrastructure, in architecture, in urban planning, in organizing the work of the municipalities, cities, and communities, and therefore this can become also a model for Europe. How to build cities, being green, smart, inclusive, which will be very important for Ukrainian wounded soldiers, human-centric, walkable, all of these issues of the new modern principles of urbanism can be applied to Ukraine and become tomorrow, more models for other cities in Germany or maybe, in France, which also will require transformation as a part of the green transition, which is very costly experiment and exercise, and Ukraine can become that place for the experiment somehow, and this could be also an asset for Europe. And the last thing is, I strongly believe that, the Ukrainian, this kind of speeding up and getting to the train, definitely will improve the train itself. We are a good nation, we are good friends, and we can definitely, energize, revitalize Europe. We are not a threat, we are an asset. And this is where I fully agree with Ambassador and his paper. And let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vladislav. Let me try to link now and then, because we are talking mostly about the potential of Ukraine, and the ambassador said that there is a strong prerequisite to win this war. And the GlobSec today published its paper on 5 security scenarios for next 2 years, 2024 and 25, where top 41 Ukrainian experts actually identified top 10 drivers that could trigger different scenarios. And the top driver had been indicated as the capacity of Ukraine's defense and security sector to sustain the war. So here I'm coming to a financial question, because you know that the assistance that is coming to Ukraine to support state budget mostly is distributed for social expenditures that helps Ukrainian authorities to actually generate and allocate internal finances to support security and defense sector. And I read your post on Facebook yesterday, quite optimistic one, amidst all this kind of neurotic assessment, whether the system already dropped to Ukraine or what should we expect? Could you just please give us a bit of sense of optimism, or at least rational expectations? What should we expect from our foreign partners when it comes to financial assistance to Ukraine? Thank you.
The situation is, it's not easy, but let's go back. When the war started, and I was joking one day, is when the war started, the IMF was the first foreign partner which gave money to Ukraine. So we gave money on the 10th of March after the war started on February 24th. Before that, the decisions were already taken by European Union, by European Investment Bank and World Bank, but since they required some signing of the documents, the disbursements came a little bit later. So, in the second half of March. In the end of March, US came with the first money. And that's it. There was nothing more. So in that moment, there was no other solution how to support Ukraine. Both military, but also economically. And we came to some sort of trap, which led also to the necessity of do monetary financing. Just to give you an idea, maybe we already forgot about that, but in June itself, the central bank printed more or less like a $4 billion in June of last year. There was a way to nowhere from that, and it was very interesting because our foreign partners in that moment were saying, "What do you want? This is a war. Every war has inflation, every war has devaluation." And when I had dinners with some important people in the global financial sector in the world, I was saying, "You need to change your rule books." Because Ukraine is different, you are used to have, with wars, with all wars a tragedy, all wars are equally bad, but it's invasion of another country, and the government is there, the government is fully actionable, the banking sector is working, and people on the front, and people in government, they want to be elected one day. It's a democracy. They think about economy as one of the important factors of the war, because many people don't like this war, but there is economic front, like also there is a military front. And therefore, in mid-March last year, we created a team. The prime minister created a small team. It was first like 7 people. It went a little bit bigger later. And from mid-March, we meet twice per week, Tuesday, Friday. We met, just to give you an idea, on the Christmas Eve, and we met on the 2nd of January, just to have determination. As a result of that, if in 2022, we had actually planning for a few weeks. 2023, we started with a full commitment of the year in terms of money. The IMF program, which has been approved, historically important because it's the first ever program the IMF did for the country in an active war and approved on the 31st of March, is not only about $15.6 billion of Ukrainian program. This is also about the commitment of our G7 partners, to provide Ukraine up to from $115 to $140 billion during the life of this program, because they were understanding the war requires a lot of resources. And while Ukrainian taxpayers are actually financing the Ukrainian army, someone should help to finance the social spendings, which are also increasing, etc. So we were working this year. Likewise, we're working for the next year. The EU facility for 50 billion euro is a part of this 115 billion commitment. Yes, there is a dialogue, but there is dialogue because Europe is also democracy. It's a difficult, it's not a Tsar does not decide. It's a democracy. Also in US, and we need to understand, we need to put our arguments, we need to lobby, we need to help, and we are working on a daily basis, really like a daily basis with the European Commission. We're working with a daily basis with IMF, with the World Bank, with European Investment Bank, with EBRD, with IFC, all these organizations. I didn't hear from any bilateral donor or from any financial organization who say, no, we don't support you. Everyone says we will support you. How, in which amount, which projects. This is already a lot about also homework in Ukraine, because there are some projects which are approved, for example, by the World Bank, but Ukraine is not, withdrawing because there is not enough, let's say, documentation or bureaucracy in Ukraine allows that. So there will be money, and we are working in order to make this money properly used, accountable. There is the transparency goes with this money together. And what we need to make sure that this money are effectively used in Ukraine and to have the maximum multiple. And this money go from grants and loans, and hopefully one day will come as investments. And this is one of the biggest outcome also, as Mr. Ambassador is saying in the paper, goes together with EU accession path, because those big companies who know, what does it mean when a country joins the European Union, getting access to the big market from one side, getting incorporated to the value chains in Europe, so they all see the benefits, and the first comers are gaining more even. Despite of the security risk we have. Sorry for being long.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Vladislav. Ambassador, I see you'd like to join the comments. If I may ask you to be quite concise, because we still have 10 minutes left, and I want a couple of questions from the audience that were put forward to you for you to answer. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add to what Mr. Rashkovan said on the financial dimension. People in the West still do not realize the importance of this war. I put in the paper this comparisons that when the United States launched the Marshall Plan, the GDP of United States was already 3.5 times larger than the GDP of receiving countries, Germany, France, Italy. Now, the combined GDP of the European Union is more than 85% higher than the GDP of Ukraine. So only marginally countries have decided to give up something from their rules for those who defend European citizens and European security in Ukraine. This is still probably the sums are high for every citizen, but if we look at it from historical perspective, the sums are not as huge as they should be now to help Ukraine to withstand the aggression and to develop even under this aggression. I'm struck with figures how much Ukraine exported last year. under the circumstances of the war. Almost 30 billion euro were exported in goods and services to the European Union. So the country works, as Mr. Rashkovan said. There is a government, there is a governance and administration. So this is also a huge asset of Ukraine. I stop
Oleg,
here.
yes, thank you very much, Ambassador. I see that you've answered all the questions in the Q&A session. So the people, at least those who asked these questions, were happy. But let me take this liberty and actually read one question aloud, because I think that this is something that often appears in the debates of pros and cons for Ukraine. Regarding it's question from Lukasz Drashevsky, regarding Ukraine as a breadbasket of Europe, don't you find Ukraine's agricultural dominance to actually pose as its biggest threat to political support from other member states? Given the well-grounded worries of EU farmers from substantial redirection of CAP or the agricultural prices, which could be impossible to compete with the side of the current member states. If it comes to consumers, how would we avoid supermarkets to simply increase their profits and sell Ukrainian products for the same price as they did before with non-Ukrainian suppliers?
First, the CAP changed for past 20 years with the entrance of Poland. It was so much feared by other big agriculture countries in Europe. The CAP changed from supporting production to supporting management of land. So this is also a huge change within the common agriculture policy. It still corresponds for almost 1/3 of the European Union budget, but the share of common agriculture policy is shrinking. And I guess for the next financial perspectives that should start in 2028, we will see additional diminution of funds for common agriculture policy. So we should not apply the current rules as if they were written forever. This European budget also adapts to new challenges. I expect this budget will also reflect the needs of enlargement. How to prevent that supermarkets do not replace other products by Ukrainian products to increase their gains, having cheaper supplier and putting aside those who did it before. There are regulations in European Union. You must have in the supermarkets, you must have a certain share of local production. So if you are in Spain, you will not put on the shelves only Polish products or Ukrainian products only because of the price. This share of products from local market is already fixed in different regulations, and countries have rights to protect the producers, and consumers are also used to buy local products. This is not that everything will immediately change only because of price. I see the European market developing. I've seen how big was the conflict between France and Spain when Spain joined the European Union in the 80s. There were tomato wars between France and Spain. Nobody speaks about it anymore. We had huge problems also with accepting Polish agriculture at the European Union. I remember from 2004, Poland has almost balanced trade in agriculture goods. Now we have more than 60 billion euro excedentary trade with the agriculture products, and it does not make any distortion to the European market. We are buying from others. There's much more foreign products on our shelves than we had it 20 years ago, but there are also Polish products on the shelves of other countries. Nothing special. This is a common market.
Okay, thank you. I've got one more question which has been left unanswered. It's a mixture of politics and economics, and given that we have 5 minutes left to the end of our event, I could read the question, suggest for the speakers to comment on it, and or actually make your closing remarks of what you consider to be the most important for our audience to leave with at the end of this event. So the question is, if Ukraine joins the Union before the Russian war is completely settled, i.e. no peace treaty in place, what kind of functional border regime can we envisage along Ukraine's de facto border with the aggressor? The question comes from Jan Schneidauf. Sorry if I miscorrectly spelled it.
A very pertinent question, but we should ask the right question at the right time. We are not talking about Ukraine joining tomorrow the European Union. We are talking about opening accession talks. The accession talks may go for several years. So nobody knows today what the situation is going to be at the moment of Ukraine joining the European Union. Let us do everything in order to win the war, and then the problem will be settled. It allows me to make the appeal to everyone who is now talking and deciding about Ukraine. Exceptional times need exceptional solutions and need courage. We are in a moment of exceptional challenges. So we need also to be more courageous in confronting future and in responding to the needs of Ukraine. European leaders and the European institutions have done more than I expected, knowing how these institutions worked before for past 2 years. I hope we will have enough leaders, courageous leaders, to go through the next hurdle and to offer solutions. Don't let us distract by Russia and all those who wish the European project to fail.
Excellent, optimistic ending from you, the ambassador. Vladislav, I would like your comments to conclude the remarks.
I don't have anything to add what ambassador said. I maybe, if I may, think or propose to the ambassador to think about another essay on the topic on what if Ukraine doesn't join the European Union. What does it mean, to European Union, and with all this anchoring of Ukrainian expectations in Europe and the reality where we are today, and still very active participation, because the fragmented world is there. We need to fight with that, and the European Union, definitely is also on the edge of this, battle, today. And Russia will do everything possible, especially next year with a number of the national elections. They will attack the democracy, they will attack liberal idea, and Ukraine today is helping to protect exactly that border, both in information wars, but also in the military war. So we are an asset, as ambassador said, and I would encourage to do that. The last moment is point is that ambassador also mentioned and put in his paper as well is about Russian assets. Russian assets is also an important topic, and I understand that some countries, the European Commission, some banks, European Central Bank, maybe not in a big fans of this idea, but even addressing this issue, finding both braveness and political willingness and technological legal solutions is also an asset for Europe, because this is the potential funding of also Ukraine reconstruction, using the mass money of the aggressor, and from the global justice perspective, this is also a right thing to do, and we need to strive for that as well.
Very good, Vladislav. Very good food for thought and call for action. Let me remind you that GlobeSec recently made a paper, Cost of Inaction, when it comes to supporting Ukraine militarily in this war. And then definitely this is something for the ambassador to consider, and probably with our assistance might be one of the first essays in next year to come, when it comes to the costs for European Union of not having Ukraine within it. Thank you very much. Thank you, the ambassador. Thank you, Vladislav. Yeah, and the audience. And looking forward to see you again at our next events. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you for all comments and encouragements. Very difficult to write on alternative histories. So the consequences of inaction, it's something that require a lot of imagination, but could be also very depressive.
Both imagination, but also scenario analysis. Because, Yulia, thanks for, I don't know why, but I'm not getting these kind of papers which you mentioned, and I already downloaded the paper on 5 scenarios, and already even shared it with also with IMF team. I'm not sure they also have seen it, so I need to find a way to to subscribe for all these news, and I will be happy to read also paper on cost of inaction. Again, unfortunately I have not read it.
Same for me.
Yeah, we will correct this. Definitely, we will adjust and send to you all the papers that we've done, and also we will announce some of the papers that we are about to produce, because we think about making a paper on strategic minerals that Ukraine has in a possession when it comes to strategic industries in the European Union and member states. So it's another argument why to support Ukraine actually of winning this war. And we will be doing this assessment both for controlled and non-controlled territories. And
we
then
are still recording, and I believe we also have listeners, but I think one of the topics which is interesting as well, and I'm speaking about the reconstruction in future, is the capacity constraints. So how to resolve the capacity constraints, which capacity constraints we have, and how to resolve them, because they may become bottlenecks from logistics perspective, but also from pure, both financial, legislative. One moment when we will be, focusing more on reconstruction. It's better to do all of these things before rather than later.
Yes, exactly. And let me also refer you to one of the paper that has received very good comments from the European Investment Bank, which was done by Ukraine industry and expertise when it comes to capacity of Ukraine's construction sector of manufacturing of building materials to participate in reconstruction.
You can send me as well this paper as well. We'd be happy to read.
Yes, I will do. So we will correct this.
But maybe sorry for my question again. We are on the record now. But we have our group and our email. Maybe there is a for the team. Maybe it's worth to share those papers. Weekly, bi-weekly. I don't know, or when they appear. It would definitely, because I read a lot, but it's very difficult to capture all the papers. And I was joking that probably there are around 8,000 pages written about Ukrainian reconstruction in terms of reports, and I can assure you that majority of them have not been read in Ukraine, and this is very pity. Very pity.
Once we proposed to create by GlobeSec a kind of a library of different analysis about
this was my proposal.
This was your proposal, yeah.
but I have not seen this library. I'm doing my own. I'm doing my own library. I have a lot of the different reports, and again, you will not see it on my paper table. Yeah, you will see my table. So this is the all these on the table is reports about reconstruction, which I'm reading. So factually on top of the financial topics. Anyway, thanks a lot, Ambassador. Thanks a lot, Yulia.
Thank you, Mr. Raskovan. Thank you, Yulia, for walking us through this discussion. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.